You've been studying vocabulary for months. Flashcard apps, academic word lists, terms with 5 syllables you've never once heard a native speaker use. And yet, your lexical resource score hasn't moved. The reason here isn't effort, it's just that you've been solving the wrong problem. So, this video will cover the first two components, collocations and chunk fluency. Part 2, next week, will cover paraphrase and register. Okay, let's begin. Right, so IELTS Lexical Resource isn't measuring the size of your vocabulary. It's measuring 4 things. We have range, that means do you vary your words? Precision, do you choose your words carefully? Collocation, do they pair naturally? And register, is the formality level appropriate? Yes, sir, it sure is. So what happens is most students focus entirely on range. More words, bigger words. But the criteria that push you from band 6 to band 7, precision, collocation, register, are much harder to see, which is precisely why examiners reward them. So today we're going to look at collocation and chunk fluency. Sounds pretty tricky, but it's not that hard. It'll be okay. You can do it. But these are the two things that operate below the surface. And once we fix them, we begin to fix everything else. Let's begin with an example sentence. Governments should do strong measurements to make this problem and increase society knowledge. Right, in that every word exists, they are real words, but the combinations, how they're put together, is kind of a disaster. What did we have in there? We had do measurements. Really, we want to say take measurements. It said make a problem. Much better to say address a problem. And increase knowledge should be raise awareness. Again, this is one of those cases where the examiner is going to read this and he's going to think, okay, well, this person clearly has vocabulary, but they're missing something about how English works. And that's really bad for your score. Here's what's fascinating. We could say fascinating or anxiety-inducing or frustrating or absolutely crazy. There's no logical rule to learn here. There's nothing I can tell you that says, if this, then this. I'm a native speaker. If you ask me, I don't know why you make a decision, but you take measures. But we absorb them as children and we store them as a chunk, like a single unit. And your job is to build the same library, but very deliberately. A good way to think of it is this. So think of collocations as outfits. If I go out wearing a tuxedo jacket, it looks kind of impressive. However, if it's a tuxedo and shirt on the top half, but then on the bottom half I'm wearing shorts and flip-flops, I haven't really created sophistication. I've created a problem, and people might think I'm a little bit strange, and it's not impressing anybody. And that's the thing. IELTS wants matching outfits. Before we go any further, grab a pen and some paper, write this down. These are eight pairs that are worth storing this week, and you really need these. I think they're 8 of the best. Maybe even try this, say them aloud, unless you're in a coffee shop with headphones, or even if you are, do it. Because your mouth needs to know these, not just your brain, and it will help. The 8 are as follows. Hold a meeting. Conduct research. commit a crime, pose a risk, raise awareness, address a problem, give a presentation, and the last one, make progress. One thing you might notice about all of those is that the word do doesn't appear, not one time. And this can be a bit tricky for learners in certain countries. For example, in Vietnamese, one verb covers much of this ground, whereas in English, you need 8 different verbs for 8 different partners. Like I said before, there's no logic, pure pattern. You need to store them as chunks, 1 unit each. Let me just add that if you're finding this useful, subscribe. I think I have some excellent content on my YouTube and elsewhere, especially these longer form lessons where we get a chance to really take a look at things in depth and really solve some problems. So do yourself a favor and me a favor. Say thank you, like, share, subscribe, send it as a gift to a friend. Any of those things really. And like I said, part 2 will be along next week. And also I just want to add, this is more of maybe a mindset thing or a personal thing. This channel's designed for people really who are stuck around IELTS band 5.5 and are trying to get to that 6.5 or maybe 7 that they need. I know a lot of students get a bit disheartened by getting stuck at 5.5 and they go, oh, it's my fault, what am I doing? I'll never get this. Don't. Just relax. For one, if you're at level 5.5, your English is already excellent. The IELTS test is set up in a way that makes it really difficult. You probably think the average English person has an IELTS level of 9 or 10. That's not true. If they did an IELTS test, their score would be around 6.5, maybe 7. So it's okay. It's just the way that the test is structured makes it really difficult. That's part of what this channel's about, and it's what my course is about. Links in the description. But it's about showing you how to pass this course, the things you need to include, the errors that you need to fix. And yeah, all I want to say is don't get disheartened. You're closer than you think. Sorry, you're closer than you think to achieving that score. Anyway, let's move on. What we're going to do now is take a look at chunk fluency. Kind of a funny term. What does that mean? Chunks of what? Chunks of mango? Chunks of words. And this one is specifically for speaking. And it reframes how vocabulary works entirely. Most people, when they're learning, what they do is they build vocabulary a little bit like Lego. You know, Lego, you get all the bricks, you put them together. Usually when we're learning a language, we do it like that, one brick at a time. Now, if you're doing speaking part 3, the examiner's watching, and the brain assembles them one by one, puts all the words together, and it can be slow, takes a lot of effort, there's micro pauses, and that's where the fluency and coherence marks go. People at band 7, they don't do this. They do something else. Instead of storing the words separately, they store phrases separately as single units. Here's what I mean. So a wide range of isn't 4 words, it's one command. From my point of view, that's one signal. When you memorize it like this, it's less cognitive load, it's more fluency, because from my point of view, will just flow out. In linguistics, this is called lexical chunks. That's multi-word units stored and retrieved as single items. With native speaking, this is acquired over years of immersion because you hear it all the time. Every time you watch the news or talk to a friend, all these kinds of things, you constantly hear them. And so you remember them that way. But the good news is you can build them if you do it deliberately in just weeks. So earlier on, I gave you 8 pairs that I think are really good to know. So here we go with 8 chunks that are worth owning for your next speaking test. Again, get a pen, write them down, or even better, say them out loud with me. Okay, here's the top 8. So we have a wide range of. From my point of view, it depends on. One of the main reasons is, to a certain extent, take into account, in the long run, have the opportunity to. And these phrases, they're not phrases to recite robotically. These are building blocks. You can just snap them naturally into answers. And then what the examiner hears is fluency. And because that's what it is. This is one of the parts of fluency. It's not just knowing all the words and somehow throwing them together. It's knowing that things like in the long run, that is like a word. That's one thing that means something. And that's how a native speaker speaks and how it's stored in their memory. You need to do the same. And you can. So that's the first 2 components down. We did collocation. Remember the matching outfits and store verb-noun pairs as single units. And you have 8 to start with. I think there are 8 really good ones. And then we did the chunk fluency, like the Lego sets, not single bricks. Yeah, it's like a whole Lego set, not just a brick that says evolve. it's the whole thing. And we've learned that we need to retrieve these phrases whole, not word by word, but treat them as if they are a word. Okay, folks, well, part 2 will be on its way very soon. Subscribe and hit notifications and you'll know when it comes out. And in part 2, we'll do paraphrase and register. That's the last 2 components. Okay, well, I hope that helped you. Take some time out now. Don't just passively watch these videos on YouTube or social media. Actually get involved with them. Get a pen, write things down, say things out loud, practice. This is how you improve. If you just watch it, you won't. Go do that now. And above all, have a nice day. See you next time.